Hey guys, Garrett back for Sableye the Mind Sculptor with another Frontier deck tech. So, I've been kind of high on the format of Frontier in general recently. I've been really liking it. I've been testing around with some of the popular decks and some of my brews. So, I figured why not just keep brewing with it. It's been fun for me. So, this is a deck utilizing a card called Rishkar Pima Renegade. So, Rishkar is a 2/2 for 3 that, when it enters the battlefield, puts a 1/1/1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures, and then each creature you control with a counter on it has tap add green to your mana pool. So what this is going to allow me to do in this deck is ramp a ridiculous amount. I'm sure you guys have seen this in Standard and Frontier a little bit in Hardened Scales Constrictor decks because it's very good at that. But this is a different type of deck with Rishkar. This is going to be trying to basically flood the board with tokens, put a 1/1 counter on each of them, and then cheat out something huge. So, starting with the lands, we have Canopy Vista, a single Westvale Abbey, and 4 fortified villages. So, Canopy Vista and Fortified Village take advantage of the fact that this is mostly going to be basics because we're not running very many colors, and Westvale Abbey is in there as a one-off because why not? And because we have a way to tutor out one-offs in this deck, so it's not really as inconsistent as it might be. Then just Plains Forest with a slight Plains bot. So, starting at the bottom of the curve, we have Hangerback Walker, technically a 0-drop, comes down on turn 2 with a 1/1 counter on it. Hangerback is in this deck because it is very, very good at doing what this deck wants to do. If you put 1/1 counters on it, they eventually become creatures, and I have a lot of effects that say put a 1/1 counter on each creature. So Hangerback Walker's ability to turn 1/1 counters into more creatures, basically, is very strong. Also, it's automatically a mana dork with Rishkar, so that's just a nice added feature. Next, Secure the Wastes, technically a 1-drop, practically, 3 or 4. So this is X and a white, put X 1/1 white warrior creature tokens onto the battlefield. So when you play a Secure the Waste at the end of turn, it can be for a lot, it can be for a little. I like that variability. Just being able to, in the early game, get 2 tokens out of it, and in the late game, have it as a mana sink is very strong in this deck. Also, this deck works well with tokens, so that's fun. And then we also have Raise the Alarm, which is 2 for 2 1/1s, a pretty good rate, and it's at instant speed, so it's just a nice trick to do end of turn. Moving on, we have Servo Exhibition, which we have a few less of than the Raise the Alarm because it is at sorcery speed, and Servo is not relevant to this deck. Declaration in Stone for removal because it seemed like some of the best removal I could play. I don't know. There are probably better cards than this for what I want to do. I just like deck. And then, this is where the deck kind of starts getting into the unplayable weird cards. We have Oath of Ajani. So when Oath of Ajani enters the battlefield, you put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control, and Planeswalker spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. So what this is going to do is put a 1/1 counter on my whole team and get them ready to cast spells, and this is actually the cheapest version of this effect at only 1 green and 1 white. Next, we have Collective Effort, which is a card that I thought was going to see more play in Standard, never really did. It is 1 white for a sorcery with Escalate, tap an untapped creature you control. And your options with this are destroy target creature with power 4 or greater, destroy target enchantment, and put a 1/1 counter on each creature target player controls. So what that's going to let me do is, shoot a creature, shoot an enchantment, and put a 1/1 counter on each creature I control. I don't see the enchantment things being very relevant, but there are definitely matchups in which the destroy effect is. However, I'm only running a couple of these because it's by far the worst version of this effect. Next, we have Nissa, Voice of Zendikar. She is a 3-mana planeswalker for 1 green. Her 1+ is to put a 0/1 onto the battlefield. 2- puts a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. There you can see the common theme. And her ultimate is -7, gain X life and draw X cards where X is the number of lands you control. I don't actually really plan on doing this. More just dirtling around with her plus and minus to get a bunch of dorks to produce a lot of mana. And then next we have a couple of Saram's Expertise. Creates 3 1/1s and then lets you play a 3-cost spell. So the cool thing about this is when you play it, you'll get the 3 1/1s and then you'll get your spell. So if you do a Collective Effort off of it, for instance, the counters will go on the 1/1s. And if you have a Rishkar in play, that Saram's basically makes 3 2/2 Elvish Mystics, which is a huge, huge card. So I've definitely had a lot of fun with this card. Just being able to cast a Nissa, a Collective Effort, or an Oath of Ajani after the Sarams is just a huge tempo swing. You're adding so much power and toughness to the board at once. It really cannot be understated. So, moving on to how we win the game, we have 3 Planar Bridge, which is an artifact that I've wanted to play with. It's 6, and then for 8, you can tap it and search your library for a permanent and put it onto the battlefield. So, the rest of the cards I'm going to be mentioning after this are less quantity, but once you have the Planar Bridge, you can just start sticking them on the battlefield. Next, we've got 2 Hornet Queens. For 4 green, this is a 2/2 Flying Death Touch that puts 4 1/1 Flying Death Touchers into play when it is cast. So this will help us stall until we get our Planar Bridge, and this will also help us close out games. Just having that much power in the air, especially if we land an Oath of Ajani afterwards, will really close out the game faster than you expect. Then each of these is one-offs. We have an Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger, in case Indestructible is relevant, an Emrakul the Promised End, in case Indestructible isn't relevant, and Eugene the Spirit Dragon, for situations where his X- is relevant. So we're going to be cheating these out with Planar Bridge. You can also natural cast them. Sometimes they will be cheap enough for that to happen. In the case of Emrakul, she might be cheap enough. Ugin is at 8 mana, and Ulamog is possible at 10. So that's the main deck. Moving on to the sideboard, we have Natural State, Declaration in Stone, and Quarantine Field. Now, Quarantine Field is very good in this deck once you have the ramp. It's not so good before that, so it's very, very bad against aggressive decks. That's why it's in the sideboard. Other than that, I would almost main deck this. The Declaration in Stone is in case of aggressive decks, or just decks where you need the removal. You can have that extra removal slot. We have the rest of our Collective Effort because there are decks that you want more of these against, and it fits very, very well with our strategy. We have 3 Gideon Ally of Zendikar because he's pretty good against control. He might deserve a slot in the main deck. I wasn't really sure, so you guys can get mad at me over that. And then lastly, we just have the rest of our Hornet Queens because there are matchups where you really, really want your Hornet Queen to block flyers. So that has been the deck. This is one I'm excited to actually play with a bit. And other than that, please subscribe or whatever, and peace out.